I've got another paper craft video for you today showing you how to make these lovely paper feathers, and they're really simple. You just need some scissors and some paper and you can create these really delicate decorations. Depending on the kind of paper you use will depend on the effect you get. So if you use a thicker card like on this one, you'll get much more stable decorations. If you use a lighter weight paper, they'll be much more delicate, but both have their appeals. So let's have a look at the materials that we're going to need. We don't need a lot in the way of the materials. We just need some bits of paper or lightweight card, a pair of scissors, a pencil, and something sharp and pointy. A knitting needle is ideal. You don't want the point to be too sharp because we're going to be using it to draw on the paper, but it needs to be able to make a good indentation. So a knitting needle is ideal, or if you've got a ballpoint pen that's run out of ink, so an old biro, that will work really well. Or you can just use your pencil, so don't worry if you haven't got something like this to hand. You might also find it useful to have a template. I've got some that you can use, or you can draw your own. So let's get making. If you're using the template, the first job is to cut that out. So I've just drawn mine on a bit of scrap paper, but you can print yours out, or you can use mine as a guide and draw your own. If you're drawing your own, what you might want to do is draw straight onto the back of the paper you're going to use for the feather. But I'm just going to show you how to use the templates if that's what you decide to do. So I'm just very quickly cutting out my feather shape. Pop that to the side, cut out the little gaps. There we go. And we're ready for the next step. So choose the paper that you want to use. I'm going to use something nice and lightweight so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to use this bit of green paper. And as you can see, I'm just using offcuts from other projects, so you don't need lots of big bits of fancy paper. You can just use what you've got left over for this. And using my pencil, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just draw around the outline of my template. If you're finding this is a bit fiddly and it's moving around as you're working, you could always put a little bit of blue tack on your template to hold it in place. And before I lift it off, this is a really important stage. I need to get this middle section in. I need to get the middle of the feather in, but obviously the paper, the template, is between my pencil and the paper I'm using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw along, but I'm going to press really, really hard as you can with that pencil. There we go. You can see I press so hard that the ends snap. That's okay. And down the other side. So all I'm doing is I'm following the lines on the template, but I'm pressing down really hard with my pencil. And when I lift it off, what I can see is that it's left an indentation. So if I just show you that, where I pressed through the template, it has left an indentation. It's left a mark on the paper, which is what I wanted it to do. So this is the bit where your pointy implement comes in. So I'm using my knitting needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over that indented line that I made with the pencil. And again, I'm pressing nice and hard so that it makes a mark right the way to the top of the feather. So you can see on the wrong side it's made a mark, and if I turn it over you can see the mark shows through, and that's really good. That's what I'm after. And if I just gently fold the paper along the indentation, you can see that's starting to make a really nice 3D shape, which is exactly what I'm after. There we go. So I'm going to go back to the wrong side, and using my scissors I'm going to cut out the shape that we've drawn on. So if you're not using a template, obviously you could just draw your feather straight onto the paper, make your indented line with your knitting needle or whatever you're using and cut it out. But if you are using the template, just remember to go over that middle section with your pencil really hard so that you get the marks down the middle. There we go. So now you can see I'm getting a really nice feather shape. So we can see my indented lines where it's showing up, that's making the middle of the feather, and I've cut out the shape. But to make it even more feathery, what we're going to do is we're going to cut all along these bits. Now this bit you need to be a bit careful for, because we need to make sure there's a bit in the middle, the bit where we've got the indented line, that we don't cut. Because if we make a cut from here and a cut from here, what will happen is that that section of the feather will fall off, which isn't what we want. So what we're going to do is just very carefully with our scissors work our way along, making the cuts up to the indented line. So if I draw the line on so that you can see it, there we go. What I've got to make sure is that this middle section, you don't need to do this on yours, I'm just doing this to show you. This middle section, we make sure that the cuts don't go into this shaded area. They can go up to the shaded area, but not into it. So if I just do a little bit more to show you, and just as I say, take your time with this bit. Don't rush it. Take it nice and easy. And you can see also I'm doing my cuts at an angle because I want the feather lines to follow, the lines of the feather to follow that. I don't want them to go straight across. And I'm going to cut some little lines in this little section here as well. Again, making sure that I don't cut through that middle section, only ever cutting up to that shaded area. And I'm doing my cuts really quite close together, so they're probably only about 1 millimetre or so apart. But what you can do, if you're not quite as confident with your scissors, is you can do them much further apart. And this will do two things. This will give you the feathery effect that you're after, you can see there, but it will also be a bit less flippy floppy than if you do very fine cuts. So there are advantages to doing these bigger cuts. So what you could do is you could start off making bigger cuts. So these are about 3 or 4 millimetres apart, about almost 1/2 centimetre, whereas the ones on the other side I've made very fine. And if I just do a few more, again I'm just being really careful not to cut into that middle section, not to cut into that shaded section. What we can see is that where we've got the bigger cuts, the shape stays really quite firm, and then where we've got the little cuts, it's a bit more fluttery, a bit more feathery if you like. So either is fine, it just depends what effect you want to go for. So I'm going to go ahead and make all my cuts nice and small like this, and then we'll have a look at the finished thing. So I'm just working my way along, and I'm going quite quickly so that you can see the finished feather. But when you do this, you can take your time, go nice and slowly, and see how it works out. So I think what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to leave it like this. So I'm going to have one side with really fine cuts and one side with thicker cuts so that you can see the difference. And if I pop a darker background behind it, there we go, purple and green, my favourite combination, you can hopefully see the different feathery effects. So these are really nice and simple to make. You can make lots of them nice and quickly, and you could also decorate them further if you want to. I've started adding a little bit of gold paint to this one, add a bit of shimmer. You could decorate them before you start cutting them, or you could add little bits of paint and things afterwards. But whatever you do, have fun and don't forget to show us how you get on.